Welcome, Manish, to the Confluence. Let's dive into the questions. Micron is known for your product and technology leadership, but when I was going through your Investor Day presentations, it looks like there's a lot of focus on manufacturing. Is manufacturing becoming a competitive advantage, and why?
Well, first of all, thank you, Pari. Thank you for inviting Micron and inviting me to the Confluence event. I'm sorry that we couldn't do this in person, but maybe next year. But really appreciate being able to have this direct interaction here, coming from our San Jose, California offices. So, manufacturing is absolutely central to Micron's strategy. What I like to say is that our shared mission with the technology development team is to deliver leading edge technology capability at scale. And so the collaboration between our R&D teams that are developing the new processes, the next generation processes, and the manufacturing team starting early to understand how we're going to implement those technologies into high volume manufacturing allows us to be able to ramp those with high yields, with fast ramp rates, and high quality all together. And what that involves is understanding the specific process modules, process equipment, chemistries involved, the sources of variability in the manufacturing process that manufacturing needs to control and tighten to be able to have that high quality and high yield. And that partnership for Micron between technology development and manufacturing in the last several years has really helped the company to get to leadership in the memory industry.
Great. And what are the reason why Micron is so bullish about the semiconductor industry? What are some of the drivers which makes you believe that this industry going to continue to grow and drive?
Well, data is everywhere, right? And you know, we talk about this period of revolution. If you go back 20 years, we had the PC era, and go back 10 years, became the smartphone or mobility era. But now, this decade from 2020 and beyond is clearly the data or big data era. And when you think about all the computing paradigms of the future, whether that's artificial intelligence, whether that's the 5G integrated networks, or whether that's autonomous. When you think about all of those together, the common thread is larger and larger data sets. So what I like to say is that we don't call it the fast data era. It's called the big data era because what the insights that we're able to glean that are transforming our lives today are about taking larger and larger data sets and being able to glean those insights that we never would have seen before when you're only analyzing a small or localized set of data. And so the power of the insight is not necessarily the power of the computing. It's the scale of the data that you can process and look for those correlations or eventually causation and insight. And that's true whether you're looking at a scientific application, whether you're looking at doing some economic modeling or financial modeling, financial analysis, or whether you're doing things to try and refine a manufacturing process, a mining process, or any other area. All of these together just add productivity, which ends up eventually producing high value economic outcomes.
So it looks like across industry you need semiconductor, and I was just looking at even to buy a car, right? Even in India, sometimes you want to buy a specific car, it takes say like 8 months of waiting period. And you talk to the companies, any automotive company, they say, hey, we have a semiconductor lag, right? They're not able to address the supply chain issues.
Mm.
And then not just in automotive industry, pretty much in every industry, and the companies are missing out on cash flow. They have products which are half done, and then because of semiconductors missing out, they're not able to get the product in customers' hand. Is that an issue for Micron as well, the supply chain challenges going through, and how are you addressing those?
Sure. So, clearly it's a worldwide phenomenon that was started through really the acceleration of many of these digital trends through that acceleration was started by the COVID-19 pandemic. It started with everyone needing to go virtual, whether that's learn from home, work from home, shop from home, and so that obviously increased the near term demand for many different technology solutions, whether they're in the cloud or at the edge in end user devices. But then it became even more than that. I think other trends that have accelerated healthcare and the need for being able to have, telehealth become part of the solution. Of course, that needs a lot more infrastructure and capability. When you think about, the push that when the world shut down, I remember seeing the picture from New Delhi. You could actually see the Himalayas
Yeah.
for the first time. I don't know. My father grew up in New Delhi. I don't know if in his entire lifetime he was ever able to see that picture. But when the world shut down with COVID in the very early days of 2020, you could see that. And the world realizing that they wanted to have a more sustainable future. Well, what's one of the result of that is the rapid adoption of electric vehicles. Electric vehicles have much higher semiconductor content in them than traditional ones, traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. And when you look forward to, semi-autonomous and autonomous, it'll be even more. So when you think about all these trends, they just accelerated, and there were segments of the semiconductor industry that were not prepared for that acceleration. Now, I'll share with you that in the memory industry, and Micron in particular, we take long-term views. Memory has not per se been the primary bottleneck in many of these areas. In fact, I've had conversations with many different automotive CEOs who have thanked Micron for
Oh,
being among their best suppliers and not being the ones who have prevented them from shipping, vehicles. And the reason we're able to do that is because we take a long-term view. We have, available clean room space in all of our factories such that when demand increases, we're able to just, procure equipment and put those leading edge processes that I was describing into place rather than having to start from scratch without having manufacturing space, because that's where the lead time is really, really long. And so I think that, for the industry, some of the other segments are now starting to try and do that, but it takes time for them to put new steel in the ground, to build new clean rooms, be able to then, install the equipment, qualify the equipment. So the world is still catching up, but memory, by and large, has done a pretty good job, and Micron certainly has done a good job there. I will say that as we look at our supply base, definitely, we have had to have much closer relationships with our suppliers, more long-term agreements to be able to share more transparently what supply we need, what capacity our suppliers are planning for us, how we're going to be able to manage that. We are holding, increasing the levels of inventory that we hold. All of those things are necessary to be able to deliver for our end customers. And I think the world is fundamentally going to realize that semiconductors are not always available. There needs to be sustained investment in semiconductor manufacturing capability and leading edge technology development. And I think that's why you're seeing so many countries around the world who are saying that they want more semiconductor presence within their manufacturing and industrial ecosystem.
interesting. So your ability to invest for long term, create these clean rooms, helped you during COVID as a demand really spiked because all the convergence of these trends. You are able to continue to supply your customers.
Exactly.
Very interesting. And one of the other things you mentioned is about how technology investment is very critical for every enterprise to improve productivity as well as reduce overall cost. I know that you've been investing in smart manufacturing and using AI in your fabs. How are these technology using to improve your manufacturing throughput?
Absolutely. So, I'll start with just, one of the things that we're all experiencing globally, in addition to some of the supply challenges in certain products, is the concurrent impact of inflation. And when you think about inflation, economists tell you the one way that certainly you can be able to battle with inflation is to have higher productivity,
Yeah.
right? Productivity improvement is really what the entire technology sector has been focused on for, decades. And, the semiconductor industry's ability to be able to deliver that generation after generation has been key. And so we definitely believe that, technology products, semiconductor product, and accelerating adoption of leading edge solutions is one of the ways that you're going to see higher productivity in the global, in economies around the world, whether in developing economies or even developed economies, where, regardless of whether they're, what the challenges are, that is certainly going to be the best place to have investment to be able to bring the, supply and demand back into balance at a macroeconomic level. In terms of the investments we've been making, we've been early adopters of smart manufacturing and artificial intelligence techniques, again, within this whole big data kind of revolution. And it's been a decade that we had our first at-scale Hadoop cluster installed, and we've continued to migrate and improve our capabilities. We are now installing sensors across our vast manufacturing network globally. We have 500,000 sensors, in addition to 250 million individual signals that come off of all of our facilities and our manufacturing equipment globally, all of which is being monitored in real time. We have several million images that we're processing, whether they're images of wafers, images of packages, images of equipment, and all of those images getting processed real time to be able to detect variation, defectivity, all of these areas. We've focused on being able to monitor equipment performance such that we can predict when maintenance is going to be needed. So these are just a few of the examples of how we've been able to improve productivity in our factories, improve yield in our factories, improve quality in our factories and of our products, all through the accelerated adoption of artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques. And we've been recognized. Actually, Micron was among the first semiconductor facilities in the world to be recognized by the World Economic Forum just 2 years ago, back in just before the pandemic, actually in 2019. Our Singapore operations were recognized as a lighthouse for operation, which is, I think, one of only 10 facilities around the world they named that year. And again, the first semiconductor facility to be named as a lighthouse of adopting these advanced, what they call Industry 4.0 or Industrial Revolution 4.0 techniques into our daily manufacturing operations. And only a year later, our Taiwan operations were also named a lighthouse. So really a lot of that investment is reaping rewards for Micron.
Very interesting. So, how are you able to take this capability to your customers? Because I'm pretty sure your customers are going through similar challenges in their manufacturing. How is Micron helping your customers, or you see your products helping your customers make their manufacturing smarter?
Absolutely. Well, our products are, there are many ways that our products are able to help our customers extract value, whether from their own product offerings. So, give you an example of, being able to provide significantly larger capacity or higher capacity DRAM modules that go into artificial intelligence training and inferencing servers in the cloud. And those products end up having 10 times the amount of memory in them that a standard server would have. And they end up being able to be among the more profitable areas because it's those inferencing engines and training algorithms that are developed that can then be deployed against that large scale of data for cloud companies across many different customer segments that gleans insights that are so valuable to the cloud companies or data center companies and customers. Certainly, you mentioned within manufacturing, there are many different end applications where memory and storage are absolutely critical to being able to create these kind of internal smart manufacturing networks that can help our customers to be able to become more efficient and more productive as well. So we're engaged with conversations with customers all the way from their end product offerings to their own internal requirements to be able to make sure that we're all benefiting from the latest memory and storage technology capabilities. And I just think that it's just so clear that memory is at the heart of all of the future computing paradigms that are going to transform the world over the next decade.
Very interesting. And you're working across both sides, working with the hyperscalers and
Mhm.
having them figure out how to use the memory and storage what you provide, and also provide use advice to your customers in terms of how they can deploy it in the manufacturing.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, this last 2 years, it's a lot of talk about sustainability. You talked about,
Mhm.
you're able to see the Himalayas from some parts of northern India, and it's a lot more awareness. But if you look at the semiconductor industry, it consumes a lot of power, water, a lot of chemicals used
Mhm.
across the
Mhm.
process. So you see in sometime in the future where the entire process is going to be more sustainable and green. And what is Micron doing around sustainability?
So I'm glad you asked. This is actually a absolute passion of mine to be able to pursue mine microns together. So I'll start by just a comment about the semiconductor industry and the memory industry in particular. The brilliance of Moore's law. So Moore's law, named for Intel co-founder Gordon Moore, where he predicted the acceleration of technology progress scaling, where we would be doubling the number of transistors or storage device bits on a wafer, every 18 to 24 months. The brilliance of that law is that with every generation, we are increasing the number of devices on a wafer more than we are increasing the amount of energy or other input resources that are used to be able to produce that wafer. So we are continuously scaling, and that's why that has been so powerful for the industry over the last 5+ decades. And so, while yes, we are consuming significant quantities of resources, we are becoming more and more productive with every generation. We continue to be on that slope, and certainly within memory, leading the semiconductor industry in terms of cadence of implementing new technologies. But we recognize that the demand for our products is growing as well, even faster. And so that's where this potential for increased consumption occurs. And so we have set out goals to be able to both combat climate change as well as other areas of the environment. Four focus areas. First is in emissions, then in energy, both consumption and type of energy that we're consuming, then in water, reuse and recycle and restoration, and then in waste in terms of being able to produce less waste, reuse what we have so that we have less that ends up going off to landfills. So these are the four core areas. And very recently, we actually just last month published our 2022 Micron Sustainability Report, where we outline new goals that we have for a Micron to first and foremost be net zero by 2050. And also, along the way, one of the milestones we're going to achieve is commitment that by 2030, we'll have a 42% reduction in our own emissions over the decade from 2020 to 2030. And 42% might sound very, very precise. Why 42? Why not 40? Or 42% is actually the percentage reduction called for by the Paris Accords, the International Treaty on Climate Change, as required to be able to maintain only 1.5 degrees C global warming increase. And so Micron felt it was important for us to also align to that international standard and be able to focus for the future on those goals. And those goals are going to take a lot of work. We don't have all the solutions. We, the industry, don't have all the solutions, whether to get to 2030 or even to get to net zero. But we are focused on understanding what we can do more efficiently within our operations, whether that's energy efficiency or more abatement within our processes to be able to have fewer greenhouse gas emissions. We also are working with our equipment vendors and materials providers to come up with new chemistries, new types of equipment processing that can be consume less energy or can have less use of certain chemicals or different chemistries, chemical coming together. All of those together to be able to help us to be able to reduce that carbon footprint that we have as we look out to 2030, 2040, and hopefully we achieve our net zero goal even before 2050.
Great. It seemed like a lot of management focus on sustainability, and hopefully Micron becomes a lighthouse for the rest of the semiconductor industry in this area.
Yeah.
Getting into the
Thank you for that.
India story, you've had the India operations for a while, and I know that you're very happy with what the Micron Technology Center is able to do. How is the role of the center changing, and are they be part of some of the transformation program you're running in the company? How is India playing a role in that?
Yeah, absolutely, Pari. So I'll start by saying, I think Micron was late to come to India. If you look at other companies, many
Mhm.
companies have been in India for even semiconductor companies for 10, 20 years. And Micron had small presence in India, but in the last 4 to 5 years, we've really ramped up our presence in what we believe is the fastest ramp in the semiconductor industries in Indian semiconductor industry history. We have now, from very, very few employees, maybe less than 50 employees 5 years ago, we have now more than 3,000 employees in India, with centers in Hyderabad and Bangalore, and continuing to grow in all aspects of the company now. And I think it started the way most operations would have started, which is certain functions deciding to locate there and trying to have the more classic staff augmentation kind of roles. But very quickly, as we ramped up, as we brought in the talent, it transformed into a place where much more than just simple functional expertise, but um, end-to-end product development could be done. Fantastic. And then, when I think about global IT, where we've been able to go from just sort of help desk enhancement kind of work to implementation of new digital platforms or new large scale software go live platforms, um, actually happening and being led out of India. Lots of different automation work that's being able to be led out of India for our manufacturing operations. And then one of the areas when I think about broader global operations beyond just IT, a tremendous focus on having all operational functions, supply chain, procurement, the smart manufacturing group that I mentioned before, being able to be located there. And, we're starting to see the value of those end-to-end projects back into our operations. I was talking about a lot of the data processing that's able to happen on an automated basis to be able to help manage manufacturing in real time. A lot of those processes are actually being delivered by out of India to be able to support our manufacturing operations, improve quality, improve yield, improve productivity.
Very interesting. You have the technology center now, then you looked at global IT and looked at manufacturing, and then driving some of the smart manufacturing AI capability out of India.
Yes.
Then the next obvious question is, what about manufacturing? And if you look at every country, they're looking at supply chain resilience, and semiconductor is one of the largest import for a country like India. And when Micron is looking at, the way you decided on ramping up your technology, when you're looking at taking your manufacturing outside the traditional Asian location, what do you look for in a country like India or other locations? What are different parameters you look for before you decide on setting up your assembly line or your production capability?
Sure. So, the first one is, ecosystem of suppliers and other established players in the industry, because the semiconductor scale of what's required to be able to manage this very, very complex manufacturing footprint. Second area is the local talent base, right? And are we going to be able to have strong talent that we can attract and be able to have a pipeline of that talent for ongoing expansion in the future? And then the third is the government support, and having government support both for ease of doing business, predictability of the environment, the regulatory environment or the policy environment, that consistency of policy, that's very important. And then, of course, incentives to be able to make up for the areas where maybe within the ecosystem, I mean, or within the infrastructure, that takes some time to be developed, and to be able to manage the overall economic outcome of the project. The government being able to have support mechanisms in place is absolutely key. And we see governments around the world now, in developed world or in developing world, all of them focused on making sure that they're providing government support as well as policies that are business friendly for companies to grow their semiconductor manufacturing presence.
Yeah, yeah. These are great parameters and dimensions to look for in a country. Hopefully, India will do well in these dimensions, like the way we did in engineering and
Mhm.
technology and IT,
Mhm.
so that over a period of time, we can build very strong semiconductor manufacturing capability. And hopefully, Micron will be one of the leaders to be able to establish this presence in India.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manish, for sharing a deep insights around how the semiconductor industry is evolving and the role of Micron, and especially the role of India Tech Center in driving some of the transformation in your organization.
Thank you very much, Pari. Really appreciate the time. And I mean, I just can't reiterate to all of our Micron India employees and everyone else. I mean, Micron India is a tremendous success. It's energizing. It's an exciting place for everyone there. It's exciting for those of us who interact with the India Center. And Micron India has absolutely become a central focal point of Micron's strategy, enabling so many different vectors of innovation and of execution for us in the future. And we look forward to building on its success. And thank you very much to you and to Zinnov for having Micron and having me on this for this fireside chat.
Thanks, Manish. Over to the Zinnov team.